In this video, we will demonstrate how to define searches which will filter records which you have previously imported into the application. These searches will be used to produce phone, email, and address lists. It is recommended that you watch the video on how to import email, phone, or address lists prior to watching this video. That video shows you how to import the records into the application from which you create lists by using searches. To access the part of the application in which you define searches, first, make sure you are in the Export module by clicking here, where it says Export. This will take you to a page where you can see all of the searches which have been created so far. To just see all of the searches which have been created so far, click on the Show Searches button. However, you can filter this list so that only searches which meet certain criteria are displayed. We will demonstrate how to use the filtering options later. Now, we will demonstrate how to define and save a new search. To define and save a new search, first, click on the New Search button. This takes you to the page where you define the criteria for the new search. The first piece of information you must enter here is the name of the search. Next, you must choose either phone list or email list from the selection box here. If you choose phone list, then all of the records which the search returns will have phone numbers. In addition, multiple records with the same phone number will be returned. If you choose email list, then all of the records which the search returns will have email addresses. Also, each record in the list which the search will produce will have a unique email address. There will be no duplicate email addresses in the list. At the selection box called Product Marketed, you can specify the product which will be marketed using lists produced by this search, although this is optional. You must also choose the client for whom lists produced by this search will be used. Note that the selected client's SIC code and NAICS code are shown in the boxes to the right. Now, we will describe the various filtering options which are available. Please note that any of the filtering options described here are optional. The first set of filtering options lets you retrieve records from a previously imported list. For example, if you want to find all of the records which were imported from a particular vendor on a given date, you select that the source was a vendor. You select that vendor from the original record source selection box, and then you select the date on which the records were imported. If you want to return all of the records which were from a particular vendor without regard to the date on which they were imported, you can leave the date blank. You could also select a client instead of a vendor. Note that this search returns all of the records which were originally imported, not ones updated from that source. This means that if several records were imported on a given day, and some of them had already been imported, and as such were updated, the search will not return the records which were updated on that day. You can also use these options to see all of the records which were updated on or after a given date by a vendor or client. Make your selection from the source type box, either vendor or client. Select the vendor or client from the Record Update Source selection box, and then choose the date from the Record Update Date box. If you leave the Record Update Date box blank, then all of the records which were updated by the chosen vendor or client will be returned. The next set of options lets you filter records by how they were used in the past. As we will demonstrate later, in the video titled Export Mail, Phone, and Address Lists, when you use this search to create a call list, you specify the date on which the list will be used. In the section called Filter by date of use. You can filter the records by the date on which they were used or not used. For example, if you want the search to retrieve only records that were used between January 1st, 2013 and January 15th, 2013, you check the box called Used, and then choose January 1st, 2013 for the start date and January 15th, 2013 as the end date. If you wanted the search to retrieve only records which were not used between those dates, you would check the Not Used box instead. Please note that filtering by date of use is not saved as part of the search. If you are going to filter by date of use, you have to enter these search parameters each time you use the search. You can also filter the records by whether they were used or not used for a set of clients or for clients which belong to a certain industry. This is done in the area of the page where it says Filter by history of use by a given client or industry. First, you have to check either the Used or Not Used checkbox. Then you can select one or more clients, or you can select an SIC code or an NAICS code, or both an SIC and an NAICS code. For example, if you want to retrieve all of the records which were used for a set of clients, you would check the Used checkbox and then select those clients by holding down the Control key and selecting those clients. If you wanted to retrieve all of the records which have not been used for clients with a particular SIC code, then you would select the Not Used checkbox and then select that SIC code. The last set of filtering options lets you define a target market. You can filter the records so that only records which belong to specified time zones, states, zip codes, and area codes are returned. To select multiple time zones or states, hold down the Control key while you click on your selections. When entering multiple zip codes or area codes, separate them with commas. You can also filter the records so that only records which belong to selected SIC or NAICS codes are returned. Again, when selecting multiple SIC or NAICS codes, hold down the Control key while clicking on your selections. Lastly, you can filter the records by specifying a range for annual revenue and number of employees. Records which fall outside of the ranges you specify will be excluded from the search. For the search which we will create here, we will choose just two search parameters. We will say that we want to get records which were originally from the vendor Lists America, and they also have to have the SIC code 0161. Once you have finished specifying your search criteria, you can see the number of records which your search will return by clicking on the View Number of Records button. To save the search which you have defined, click on the Save Search Without Exporting a List button. If you want to use this search to actually export a list from the application, we would click on the Accept Search button and then the Generate and Export List button. However, that will be demonstrated in the video called Export Email, Phone, and Address Lists. Right now, we will just save the search, which takes us back to the list of searches which have been created so far. As we demonstrated earlier, if you click on the Show Searches button, all of the searches which have been created so far will be displayed. However, there are filtering options available on this page which let you display a subset of the searches which have been created. From this selection box, you can specify that only searches which belong to a particular client will be displayed. Notice that if you select a client, that client's SIC and NAICS code are automatically selected. You can select multiple clients by holding down the Control key while clicking on the clients you want to select. If you select an SIC or an NAICS code, all clients which have the SIC and NAICS code you selected will be selected. You can also restrict the results so that only searches created within a particular date range are returned. You specify a start and end date for the date range here. Searches will be returned which fall either on or between the dates you specify. If you specify a start date but leave the end date blank, all searches created on the start date and after will be returned. If you specify an end date but leave the start date blank, all searches created on the end date and before will be returned. You can also filter the results so that only searches which were used to market a particular product are returned. Just select the product from the selection box here. Recall that earlier, when we demonstrated how to create a new search, we showed you that you can select the product which the search is used to market. Recall also that when we demonstrated how to create a new search, we mentioned that you had to select either phone list or email list. If you want to filter the results so that only the lists which were designated as phone lists or email lists are returned, you can select one of those two options here. Lastly, note that below the list of searches, there is a button called Change Active Inactive. When a search is inactive, it cannot be used to produce lists. You can change the status of a search, either from active to inactive or vice versa, by checking the checkbox next to that search and then clicking on the Change Active Inactive button. You can filter the search results to display only active searches or only inactive searches, or both active and inactive searches. To display both active and inactive searches, select both. To display only active searches, select Active, and to display only inactive searches, select Inactive. You can also edit an existing search. To do this, click on the radio button under the Edit Search column, which corresponds with the search you want to edit, and then click on the Edit Search button. This will take you to a page which is similar to the one at which you create a new search, but all of the information for the search which you are editing is already filled in. Note, however, that if you change any of the information here other than that which is under the Filter by Date of Use section, you will have to enter a new name for the search, and the search will be saved as a new search. When you have finished making any changes you want to make to the search, click on the Save Search Without Exporting a List button to save the search and be taken back to the search listing page.